So Briar, thanks for coming to our show, Digital Disruptors, and we're going to talk about your favorite topic, PR, today. And welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Perfect. The PR game is really changing in 2019, and you're probably riding that wave. And we want to get your insights in this episode. So before we dive deep in, give us a little bit of insight about who you are, where did you live, and where did you come to Dubai? How long have you been in PR? Who's your favorite superhero? I mean, stuff like that.
Wonder Woman. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. And I've got a bit of a crazy story, I guess, because I'm originally from a very small town on a farm in New Zealand. So that's where it all started for me, next to the sheep, the cows, the goats, all of that good stuff.
Wow.
And after university, in which I graduated with a Bachelor of Speech and Language Pathology, I made a crazy decision to move to New York City, right? And I guess for me, like most of new grads, I really struggled to find a job. So that's how the crazy decision even came about. So I moved to New York. I had my bag. I was kind of pulling it through the busy streets of Manhattan. I didn't know a single person in the city. And I got a job as a waitress, very typical New York story, I guess. And then I started working in real estate. So I started working in real estate on the side. Following a year in New York, I then moved to London, where I started working in recruitment. So it's something, again, completely different, still not on the PR kind of buzz yet. And then it was on the side that I started becoming very passionate about digital marketing, and I started building my brand.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing some websites, I started working with clients, I started doing a content strategy, I was all across Instagram, and from there I started to have people come up to me and say, okay, we see what you're doing, how can we do this as well? And I was like, right, there's a market for this. So I started working with more clients, and then I hated the London weather, if I'm completely honest with you, and I moved to Dubai, the sunny streets of Dubai. And you know, from what I found as well, I love PR. PR comes very naturally to me. Obviously, I've got my background in speech and language pathology, so words. I love crafting words. I love crafting narratives, which is all very PR. And I started having publications approaching me, like Forbes and Khalil Times and Entrepreneur Magazine, and they were saying, hey, Briar, we see that you are working with clients, building brands. What's your opinion on this, or what's your opinion on that? And really, the transition that we've seen with PR is extravagant. You know, we've seen it all go from very typical traditional media publications like TV and magazine and all of that to the shift. Now publications want to interview people who have an online following because then they can leverage that digital following and build up their digital brands. So by building a PR strategy online and offline, you're bringing in new opportunities to you. You're bringing in new clients, you're out there, you're building brand awareness, and also the more traditional media outlets are coming to you because they know you as the industry expert. Mm-hmm. So there's been a huge shift, and I think it's very important that we're not focused on the traditional side of things anymore, that we do have this digital front, and we are leading from the digital side of PR as well. So I'm actually a certified digital marketer, so I've got that in common with you guys, you know, that digital side. Yeah,
but it's an interesting story. The thing that we would take away from this is traditionally people used to go to agencies or consultants who had awards, who had recognition. But what you've actually told in the story, and what we can learn, is you've actually lived your what you're actually trying to sell. So you were building an online presence. People started noticing this, and they told, okay, I can see proof. I can see trust that Briar has built. Can I have that same thing for myself or for my brand?
Absolutely.
So I think that's a brilliant way of just business development to getting more clients, getting more trust. I think this is quite inspiring, and for people, for entrepreneurs out there, and this is something that we have to look forward to, in building. So I think you've touched upon this, PR probably 10 years back, 20 years back, it was about having a relationship with the press because they controlled a lot of say media. So there used to be only finite news channels, finite newspapers, finite radio stations, and if you had to put your word out there, they were the gatekeepers. So as a PR person, as a company that needs PR, you have to have a good relationship with your press to put the word out for public,
Absolutely.
even for your news, your new releases, even disaster management, stuff like that. But today, brands can own their media.
They can own the story. Yep.
They can own their story. They can own the channels that they can push their stories to. You talked about content. How has this changed the PR game? I mean, in terms of having a relationship with journalists and storytellers and who were gatekeepers to now brands and CEOs becoming their own new news outlets, or they're transferring from advertising to more of a media company.
Awesome. Yeah. No, very good question. I still think it's very important to still maintain these relationships with the media, and part of what we do as an agency as well through Briar Prestidge International is we not only build these personal brands and these personal narratives of companies, but we still have that relationship with the traditional media. We still do press releases. We still, for me, from the more untraditional side of things, I think it's very important to have that solid relationship. All the media relations I have on WhatsApp, I would much rather than send a press release, I would much rather call them. And I think that that's really important, because when they like you, they're going to feature your clients, they're going to feature your story, and they're going to want to be part of your journey. Again, building your own, building the company brand, or building your CEO's brand within the agency, within the company, is very important, because if your company has a good reputation on the market, again, these media outlets will want to feature you. From the sense of, yes, we are our own storytellers, and yes, every company now has the ability to produce their own content. I think it's super important. The latest statistics actually for Instagram are we have 1 billion Instagram users, and we have 1.5 billion daily Facebook users.
Wow.
And that's extravagant, right? So if you want to be reaching your audiences, if you want to build influence on the market, online and offline, you need to be creating content. And I love, and we talked about it offline before, but I love the Gary Vee content strategy model, in which you start off with a long form piece of content, so like a blog, or an interview that you've done with the media, or an interview that you've done with someone, one of your clients or prospect partners, whoever it may be. And from that, you then make little tweets, or you make little 30-second segments which you're pushing out on Instagram. And so you really can make the most and optimize on everything that you're doing in your day-to-day job. You can be documenting it, and from that you can be creating your marketing strategy. So you really don't need to, you really don't need to reinvent the wheel, so to speak.
No. The reason I brought this up is it's very relevant, because though we are strong believers of digital, but still titles like College Times, Gulf News, Forbes, Middle East, all these hold a lot of value in people's hearts.
And influence, absolutely.
And influence.
Yeah.
Yes, they might not have the reach they had 10 years back. They have less space on the shelves and attention from the people. But the moment you have your name on say, an article in Forbes, you exactly publish that on digital and tell her, featured in Forbes.
Absolutely.
This gives a lot of trust.
Credibility.
So I think this combination, I totally agree with you that yes, the old school PR is important, but the distribution, yes, can be digital, can be micro content, can be smaller snippet of information which people can consume. So they hold trust, and you use digital for distribution.
Absolutely, and
Brilliant.
I think it's a great leveraging tool, like what you're saying. Part of another strategy that we do, which works very well for our CEOs, is we would pitch them to speaking opportunities, so for panels or conferences here in the region, and then we would actually film that panel discussion from the audience. So not only are they reaching decision makers within the audience, but then we're also repurposing that out on cross social media. So that's been a very strong strategy which we've recently got involved with.
Brilliant. So you guys are changing the game with content, as per se. And you're using these outlets as places where you can actually capture content. Brilliant. So if, as a CEO or as a brand owner, if we're looking at hiring a PR consultant, a PR agency, what should we be looking at in 2019, 2020? I mean, because a lot of people need PR, and it adds a lot of credibility, trust, and would definitely increase the business at one point. But what should we be looking at so that we hire the right person?
A great question. Definitely, I think it's important to hire a PR agency that practice what they preach. So, as we spoke about before, I've been very proactive in terms of building my own brand. We recently hired a new content producer in-house as well, just to be purely focused on the agency's brand and the agency's marketing. And it's great to see that you guys are doing this podcasting series as well, because it showcases what you guys do and could do for your clients, which is awesome. So I think it's very important to hire someone who practices what they preach, for one. Again, I think it would be very important, I know it's very important to hire someone who does have that digital experience as well. Not just the PR relationships, not just the fantastic storytelling and content writing and brand positioning, but someone as well who does have experience of the online landscape, because you really do need these two to integrate for a successful marketing strategy.
Brilliant. And I know you guys are already doing this, but PR probably 5 years back, it's more of a written content, more of appearances. But you've been talking about video as a content. So should a PR agency have videographers who can then slice and dice videos in different formats? Is that something important that we should look at from a PR perspective?
That has been very important for us as an agency.
You guys have been doing it brilliantly, yeah?
Thank you. I love writing, and I do all copywriting in-house, and that's something that I would find very tricky to give away. But, I've hired videographers right from the get-go, because 80% of content this year is predicted by Cisco to be video, so it's very important that we are making the most of it. The algorithms on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram are all heavily favored towards video. I think you get like 30% more reach on LinkedIn, which is extravagant if it's video. But again, it's still very important to be using these blog articles, especially from an SEO perspective, so search engine optimization. Often as well, CEOs are still very much reading blog articles, staying in the know. And we do a lot of copywriting for our clients because, especially, oh my gosh, have you read that book by Ryan Holiday? And it's on New Age PR. It's fantastic. So Ryan Holiday, just to give you a bit of a lowdown, but he is the marketing director for American Apparel, and he's the kind of guy that is really pushing this New Age PR. And what he has done is extravagant. He's the person that will have a client put up a billboard of a client. That evening he will tear it down himself, take photos of it, and then send out a bunch of emails to off fake email accounts to different media outlets so that they start writing about it. And he says that it's very important these days, in today's day and age, to be focusing on the smaller blog pages, because a lot of the big traditional ones, for instance, like Huffington Post and Forbes Global and all of that, they get their news now from the smaller blogs. So it's very important that when we are taking this into account when we're sending off press releases and when we are creating stories and creating buzz about something. So
Interesting.
Anyway, read this book. It's fantastic.
I should really look into it. Yeah. But the thing is, it's pretty interesting that the game is changing. Yeah. And being digital, we are forced to measure a lot of things. Yeah. We want to see how much reach we got in terms of impressions, how many likes we got, how many views we got on our video, and even how much sale we got from this particular piece of content. When we go and do PR, how do you measure it? Are there any tools that you recommend for brands to use, for CEOs to use, to see whether is that PR really doing good or is it doing bad? Do you want to help us there in understanding how do you measure good PR, what tools you use, and what are the strategies in place?
I think traditionally PR has been very tricky to measure, and a lot of companies do perhaps complain about that or have been known to in the past. Like yourselves, we obviously have a lot of digital processes set up to help measure PR and again optimize. So, for instance, we are featured in Forbes or Entrepreneur Middle East. We can actually see the readership that those magazines get, and then we can also use different tactics online as well to see, from our side, how much the remarketing is getting, is reaching people. So we do have this very digital focus when it comes to measuring. Something else that we do as well is we measure things like mentions. We can measure that online. We've got Google Alerts set up as well. So anytime one of our clients is mentioned across the internet, we instantly see and can deal with it. If it's a bad situation, which isn't very often. I think it's just really important to have this, again, online, offline approach. And quite often I find other PR professionals as well, maybe they get caught up in the more smaller publications. I would ditch them completely. And I think it's really important to think about your strategy. So, focusing on, for instance, like a magazine that doesn't really have much reach here in the region, I wouldn't bother, would be my personal advice. And it's important to more so stick to the bigger publications, which are going to get you the reach.
Brilliant. Makes sense. In terms of, I know that every business at one point needs PR, because of the obvious reasons. So at what point or what kind of brands you think should actually have a PR agency on board? Is it a startup? Is it a funded startup? Is it an organization? Is it a growing CEO? A lot of options. So who do you think that can, if they don't have a PR now, should have a PR?
Everyone right from the get-go should have PR. And even if you can't afford to necessarily work with an agency, read Gary Vaynerchuk, look into what Neil Patel are doing. These are all thought leaders who are talking about marketing. Even follow myself. I'll just do a little plug in there. Briar Prestidge on Instagram. You can follow me because I'm very keen, I guess, to share my knowledge and share my expertise. So, there are things that you can be doing yourself. You can be on Instagram, for instance. You could be using hashtags. A way that I built my own brand very quickly here in the region 2 years ago was I just used a whole bunch of Dubai-based hashtags on Instagram, right? And then slowly, I had my most followers are here from Dubai.
Wow.
So, there's simple things like that you can do. Did you know as well that here in the region, we are the most connected out of anywhere in the world on LinkedIn? So, and the algorithm's super free. So, for instance, if I like your photo, it gets shared out to my entire network of 13,000 people, which are probably predominantly Dubai-based. So very quickly, we are building our brand for free, In saying that, though, I think it's very important to work with a PR strategist. If you are a CEO or if you are a high-profile person within an organization, you can't really afford to screw it up, realistically, right? It's very important that you do have an outside set of eyes, that you do have someone with expertise as well who can position you in the right way. Because again, one of the more unfortunate things about online is it doesn't disappear. And it's not easy to get rid of things online. So once you say it, it's kind of cemented, it's kind of out there. So you need to start thinking about your brand story from the get-go, how you came to be, what are your values, what's your purpose, what can you give to your audience? That's very important. And how will you tell your story?
Makes sense. So everybody needs PR. You can do things on your own, but there's always an opportunity cost in terms of, are you running a business or you're doing PR? But at one place, when you want to have the right brand story there, you have to have a consultant so that they can put things in place. They can have, like you said, put the right connections in the press, get your mentions there, things like that. So perfect. So I think this is very, very relevant. Yeah. In terms of PR, PR is taught in a lot of universities here. There are, and a bunch of our listeners are students. So when PR is taught in universities, they have a set curriculum. But the PR has probably changed a lot in the last 4 to 5 years. What is that advice that you could give them so that they can integrate, with the moment they pass out, how can they get integrate into the PR industry much more efficient? And what are some things that they can learn? You did mention Neil Patel and Gary Vaynerchuk. Anything else? Any books? You did mention a book, but something else that they could actually practically better themselves in knowing PR?
So from my experience of university, you come out of university and even though you've spent 4 years studying, there is still a lot to learn, right? So I'm a big believer in being proactive with your learning. There is Coursera online, which has a bunch of fantastic free courses that you can dabble in, even if it's around like negotiation or branding. There's obviously lots of digital marketing courses on there. There's some around communication. So that would be one piece of advice. I would also recommend as well to watch YouTube videos, watch these thought leaders that you mentioned. Read books about PR. I just opened a fantastic one. I can't remember. Let me get back to you with the author of it. But there's a couple of books that were written last year on the shift that we've seen from PR. So it's very important to be proactive and be a lifelong learner, I would say, to these university students as well. I never stop learning. Mm-hmm. And it's not even just from books. I think it's very important to learn from other people, right? So you're in marketing, I'm in marketing. We've got a bunch of stuff we can learn from each other. I was speaking to your colleague about what you do, and it's amazing. And I've got lots of take-home messages that I can take from that. So commit to being a lifelong learner would be my biggest piece of advice if I want people to get something out of this.
Brilliant. And I think towards, we're kind of towards the end of our conversation in terms of this podcast. Any advice that you would give to CEOs of brands in terms of managing the reputation, especially in our region like Dubai? What would be probably your top 3 tips? 1,
get on Instagram. If you are 50 or 60-year-old man, you need to be on Instagram. I don't care if you think it's for millennials, it's not, yeah? So it's very important that all companies have their CEO on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and that they are appropriately positioned and that they are leveraging their company's marketing strategy through the CEO. Because people don't like faceless corporations anymore.
True.
People want to buy from people. I know it's so lame, and I always say the same, but it is so true, right? If you like someone and if you trust someone, you will want to buy from them. So it's very important that you do have your CEO out there in some way, shape, and form, and that they are a spokesperson for the company. A second piece of advice is to develop the story. What kind of things can you say as a company which are quotable, that people will take from a soundbite, and something could be like, wow, that's an amazing piece of knowledge that really gives value to me. I love this company. I love the story and what they're about. Another piece of advice I would have is to be proactive with your marketing strategy. You can't really afford to sit there and not do anything. It is very important that you are creating content, that you are appropriately positioned, that you are telling the story, and that you are just putting content out there. Even if you put it out there and you tweak it in 3 months' time after you've got some ideas on engagement and what you feel is really working for your target audience, you can reposition the brand. But if you're not doing anything, then you're not going to have anything to measure or tweak on. So it's very important to get out there in some way, shape, or form.
Yep. So show up, do your stuff, and do it the right way. Yeah?
Absolutely. I love that. Perfect summary.
Brilliant. I think this was really insightful. And I hope people can take away some practical advice from these. Yeah.
I hope so too.
Yeah. And I think this would be really good. Yeah.
Amazing.
So Brian, thanks a lot for coming in, taking time out and giving us this information, because I really hear good stuff from your clients about you. Yeah,
perfect. It's always good. And they loved being on the podcast with you in the previous episodes as well. So thank you so much for having me today.
Likewise.